My sister-in-law slapped me during my own anniversary dinner because I served myself first and my husband sat there in silence while my family watched me be humiliated. The sound of her hand against my cheek cut through the soft clinking of silverware and whispered conversations. For a moment, nobody moved. I could feel the heat spreading across my face, but the pain was nothing compared to the cold disappointment I felt when I looked at my husband and saw him staring at his plate. "You've forgotten your place in this family!" she shouted. The candles on the table flickered between us. My anniversary cake sat untouched. Everyone waited for me to break, to cry, to create a scene. Instead, I slowly lowered my fork, wiped my cheek, and looked at the people who had just shown me exactly who they were. My name is Claire, and for 8 years I had worked hard to become the kind of wife, daughter-in-law, and sister-in-law everyone said they wanted around. I was the one who remembered birthdays, arranged family gatherings, brought thoughtful gifts, and quietly fixed problems before anyone noticed they existed. My husband, Daniel, used to admire that about me. He would tell people I was the reason our home felt warm. But over time, his appreciation became expectation. My kindness became something everyone simply assumed would always be available. His family had traditions that were never written down, but somehow always applied to me. I was expected to serve first, speak carefully, and never challenge the older voices at the table. Whenever I disagreed, I was called sensitive. Whenever I stayed silent, they called me respectful. I told myself patience was strength. I believed love meant making room for people, even when they rarely made room for me. But somewhere along the way, I realized I had become invisible inside a family that only noticed me when I stopped giving. That anniversary dinner was supposed to celebrate my marriage. Instead, it revealed the truth I had spent years refusing to see. In the weeks before that dinner, the warning signs had been there. They were small enough that I almost convinced myself they did not matter. At family gatherings, my sister-in-law, Vanessa, had a way of making comments that sounded like jokes until I noticed who was laughing and who was staying quiet. "You're still doing everything yourself?" she once said while watching me clear plates. "Some women just don't know how to let others take responsibility." Her smile was polite, but her eyes carried something sharper. At another dinner, she moved my chair without asking, telling me, "You'll sit there. That's where you usually belong," everyone continued, eating as if nothing unusual had happened. I noticed Daniel's hesitation every time. The quick glance in my direction, the uncomfortable pause before he changed the subject. But he never stepped in. That silence became its own kind of answer. Even preparing for our anniversary dinner, I caught myself checking if everything was perfect for everyone else before thinking about what I wanted. The flowers, the menu, the seating arrangement, all of it carried my effort. Yet somehow I still felt like a guest in my own celebration. I just didn't know that night would finally force me to stop asking for a place at a table I helped build. The moment everything changed was not when Vanessa raised her hand. It was the second after, when I looked around the table and realized nobody was coming to defend me. My cheek burned, but my mind felt strangely clear. For years, I had waited for someone to notice the little things, the way I was spoken over, the way my efforts disappeared, the way I was expected to shrink so others could feel important. I had mistaken patience for peace and silence for love. But sitting there beneath the warm glow of anniversary candles, with my husband avoiding my eyes and everyone pretending this was just an uncomfortable moment, I finally understood something. Nobody was going to give me the respect I kept hoping they would offer. I had to decide whether I would continue teaching people that my kindness had no limits. I slowly picked up my napkin and pressed it against my cheek. My hands were steady. My voice was quiet. "Daniel," I said, looking at my husband, "I need you to answer one question." The room went still. "Is this the family you expect me to accept? Or is this the moment you finally see what I've been living with?" For the first time all night, nobody had an easy response. I did not leave that dinner planning a dramatic confrontation. I left with something more valuable: clarity. The next morning, I stopped trying to convince people that I deserved basic respect. Instead, I started paying attention. I documented conversations, saved messages, and quietly observed the patterns I had spent years excusing. I wasn't looking for revenge and anger. I was looking for truth. I reviewed our finances, our shared responsibilities, and the decisions I had allowed others to influence. I spoke with a close friend who worked in family mediation, not because I wanted a battle, but because I wanted to understand my options and protect myself. For the first time, I prepared instead of reacting. I focused on the things I could control, my independence, my boundaries, and my future. I stopped volunteering for every family obligation. I stopped explaining every choice. I stopped asking for approval from people who had already decided how they wanted to see me. The biggest change was invisible. I became calm. Vanessa expected anger. She expected tears. She expected me to prove her right about being too emotional. Instead, I gave her nothing. My silence became the one thing she could not manipulate. The consequences did not arrive with a dramatic announcement. They arrived quietly, one small truth at a time. A few weeks later, Vanessa hosted another family dinner. I arrived on time, dressed simply, carrying no gifts and no apology. For the first time, I walked into that house without trying to earn my place inside it. As everyone settled at the table, Vanessa looked at me with the same confident smile she always wore. "So, are you still upset about that little misunderstanding?" she asked. The room became quiet. Before, I would have rushed to make things comfortable. I would have laughed it off, softened my words, and protected everyone except myself. Not this time. I placed my glass down and calmly said, "A misunderstanding is when someone spills a drink. Choosing to hurt someone and then expecting silence is something different." Nobody spoke. Daniel looked down at the table. He knew exactly what I meant. Over the next few weeks, the family dynamics shifted. People stopped asking me to organize everything. They stopped assuming I would always forgive without acknowledgement. And Vanessa finally faced the one consequence she hated most. Not my anger, but my absence from the role she had created for me. I did not destroy her reputation. I simply stopped helping her maintain mine as someone who could be disrespected without consequence. The hardest part was not watching Vanessa change. It was watching everyone else finally admit what they had seen all along. My mother-in-law called me a few days later. Her voice was softer than usual. She did not defend Vanessa. She did not make excuses. She simply said, "I should have stopped things sooner." Those words mattered, but they did not erase the years of silence. Daniel was the one who struggled the most. For the first time, he had to face the fact that staying neutral had never been neutral. By refusing to speak, he had chosen the comfort of avoiding conflict over protecting the person he promised to stand beside. Our marriage did not magically heal overnight. Trust does not return because someone finally admits they were wrong. It comes back through changed behavior, consistency, and accountability. As for Vanessa, she never apologized the way I once imagined she would. People like her rarely surrender their pride completely, but she became careful around me. She measured her words. She understood that the person she once dismissed was no longer willing to accept disrespect to keep the peace. That was the real consequence. Not revenge, not humiliation. Just a woman finally realizing her value was never determined by how much she could tolerate. Months later, I realized the biggest change was not in how Vanessa treated me. It was in how I treated myself. I no longer walked into rooms wondering how much of myself I needed to sacrifice to be accepted. I stopped measuring my worth by how useful I could be to others. I learned that peace does not come from keeping everyone happy. It comes from no longer abandoning yourself to avoid someone else's disappointment. Daniel and I had many difficult conversations after that night. Some were painful, some were uncomfortable, but for the first time in years, we were honest. He began showing up in the moments where he once stayed silent, and I began trusting actions more than promises. Our marriage found a new foundation, not because we forgot what happened, but because we finally faced it. As for family gatherings, I still attend some. I still smile. I still care. But I no longer enter those rooms as someone waiting to be chosen. I enter as someone who already knows her value. That anniversary dinner was supposed to remind me of the love I had built. Instead, it taught me the most important lesson of my life. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is not making someone feel your pain. It is becoming someone they can never hurt the same way again.